When American troops entered Germany at the end of World War II, they arrived in a country shaped not only by destruction, but by years of controlled information. German women had spent more than a decade absorbing a steady stream of messaging about what enemies, especially Americans, were supposed to be like. These ideas were reinforced through newspapers, posters, radio broadcasts, and everyday social pressure. So when American soldiers appeared in German cities and towns in 1945, they were not seen with neutral eyes. They were seen through expectations already formed. This video examines that contrast, what German women were told American soldiers were like, and what they actually encountered in daily life during the Allied occupation. During the Nazi era, propaganda portrayed Americans in highly specific ways. They were often depicted as undisciplined, crude, and intellectually inferior. American society was described as chaotic and morally weak, lacking the order and seriousness emphasized by the German state. Propaganda stressed racial division, claiming the United States was unstable and internally fractured. American soldiers were portrayed as unreliable, driven by materialism rather than duty. Their military success was attributed not to discipline or skill, but to overwhelming industrial capacity and brute force. For German women, these messages were unavoidable. They appeared in public spaces, schools, and media. Even those who privately doubted the regime still absorbed these portrayals simply through repetition. By 1945, many German women expected American soldiers to behave as occupiers without restraint, hostile, careless, and indifferent to civilian life. The first encounters between German civilians and American troops were often shaped by shock, not because of dramatic events, but because of contrast. American soldiers appeared physically different from what many expected. They were generally well-fed, well-equipped, and carried themselves with a relaxed posture unfamiliar after years of rigid German military presence. Their behavior stood out immediately. Americans spoke casually, joked among themselves, and often addressed civilians without the sharp formalities German women were used to hearing from uniformed authority. This informality was not interpreted the same way by everyone. Some found it confusing. Others found it unsettling. But it was unmistakably different from the image they had been prepared for. German women observed American soldiers most frequently in public spaces, streets, checkpoints, aid stations, and town centers. One of the most noticeable differences was how Americans interacted with civilians. Orders were still enforced, but often without shouting or theatrical displays of power. Conversations were brief, sometimes awkward, but generally calm. Many German women noted that American soldiers often spoke directly rather than relying on intimidation. This did not mean the soldiers lacked authority. It meant they exercised it differently. Children approached Americans with curiosity. Soldiers sometimes responded with humor or small gestures, which contrasted sharply with years of fear-based interactions with uniformed men. These observations did not immediately change opinions, but they challenged assumptions. Cultural contrasts were impossible to miss. American soldiers chewed gum, smoked freely, listened to music, and displayed a casual confidence unfamiliar in defeated Germany. Their uniforms appeared practical rather than symbolic. Their movements were less rigid. German women also noticed how Americans treated each other. Rank existed, but it was not always emphasized in public interactions. Soldiers addressed officers differently than German military tradition would have allowed. This behavior sometimes clashed with expectations of discipline. To some, it appeared careless. To others, it suggested confidence without constant enforcement. These cultural differences were neither universally welcomed nor rejected, but they were observed, discussed, and remembered. Despite these differences, American soldiers were still representatives of an occupying power. They controlled food distribution, housing access, travel permissions, and enforcement of new regulations. German women understood that uniforms still carried authority, regardless of demeanor. Interactions were shaped by caution. Politeness did not erase power imbalance. Calm behavior did not eliminate uncertainty. Many women learned quickly which rules were flexible and which were not. The contrast between informal behavior and firm authority created a new dynamic, less visibly oppressive, but still absolute. This complexity mattered. Perception was shaped not just by attitude, but by consequences. Over time, repeated exposure replaced abstract ideas with lived experience. Some German women began to reassess what they had been told. Others maintained skepticism but acknowledged inconsistencies between propaganda and reality. The key shift was not admiration or rejection, it was specificity. Americans stopped being an idea and became individuals performing roles within a system. Perceptions varied widely by region, circumstance, and individual experience. No single narrative applied to everyone. But one pattern was consistent. Propaganda lost its power when it could no longer explain daily observation. Not all expectations collapsed. Distrust remained common. Resentment toward occupation, authority persisted. Cultural misunderstandings continued, sometimes deepening rather than resolving tension. Some women interpreted American informality as arrogance. Others saw it as unpredictability. Power imbalance ensured that no interaction was truly neutral. The end of war did not erase division. It altered how it was expressed. The story of how German women viewed American soldiers is not about admiration, conflict, or emotion alone. It is about expectation versus reality and how propaganda functions until it is tested by experience. This contrast reveals something broader about history. Ideologies thrive in abstraction, but they weaken in the face of daily interaction. What German women encountered was not the collapse of belief overnight, but the slow replacement of assumptions with observation. And that process, repeated millions of times across occupied Germany, shaped how a defeated society began to understand a world beyond the narratives that had been taught.